going to get started now. My name's Elizabeth Winston. On behalf of Father Charles Trujillos and the CIC, I'd like to thank you all for coming. Tonight, we're very excited to welcome some special guests, a best-selling bluegrass band, the Hillbilly Thomists. They also happen to be a bunch of Dominicans. We're going to have the founder of the band, Father Thomas Joseph White, open things up, introduce the band, say some words about their music, and then we'll have music, and afterwards some time for Q&A, and then I hope you all stay and join us for a brief reception afterwards. The parking garage closes at 9 o'clock, so just make sure to keep that in mind. Anyway, I'm going to hand things over to Father Thomas Joseph. Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Thank you, Father Charles. It's great to be here at the CIC. We are the Hillbilly Thomists. It's a Dominican bluegrass band, something you don't see every day. We're in the wrong place for bluegrass music because usually you play this kind of music around a kitchen table, and it's kind of informal, but we'll try to create the best kitchen table informality we can. And, bluegrass music has great themes. God, unrequited love, and murder, and the best songs, all three. But we've tried to be on the straight and narrow. So some of our songs, just God tonight mostly. But we have an album that's on sale here that happily has been very popular, and a sort of theme that runs through a lot of songs is pilgrimage in this world, and you'll hear that come out a little bit. And so we thought we would start with a song that's played on this gadget, which is a weird Appalachian dulcimer, sort of built in the shape of a banjo. And this is an old classic sort of bluegrass gospel standard called "What Would You Give in Exchange for Your Soul?" Brother afar from the Savior today, risking your soul for the things that decay. Oh, if today God should call you away, what would you give in exchange for your soul? What would you give? What would you give? What would you give in exchange for your soul? Oh, if today God should call you away, what would you give in exchange for your soul? Our Father. Mercy is calling you, won't you give in? Let the dear Savior tenderly plead. Risk not your soul, it's precious indeed. What would you give in exchange for your soul? what would you give in exchange for your soul? Our album was architecturally masterminded by Brother Justin Bulger, who also wrote a song for that album called I'm a Dog, which he is going to tell us a little bit about while he gives me time to switch to the banjo.
All right, yeah, he's talking too much too, so take this mic away. Okay, so St. Dominic founded our order. His mother, Jane, had a dream that she gave birth to this little doggy with a torch in his mouth, and he's running around the world, setting the world on fire. Well, lo and behold, she gave birth to Dominic, and he kind of did that with the gospel, right? And so this song is called I'm a Dog. It's about being a Dominican. Interestingly, too, Dominicanes, Latin for Dominicans, it was a pun. So, canes, dogs, Domini, of the Lord. So it came true in different ways for Dominic, and hopefully still true for us today. The depths of this desiccation, the height of these scraping towers, the width of this wasting, I see potential for action. Inside hold a treasure, take hold of this earthen vessel. So worn and weary, but there's still potential for action. I'm a dog with a torch in my mouth for my Lord, making noise while I got time, spreading fire while I got earth. How you wish it was already lit. Give me your fire, I'll do your work. I'm just a dog for my Lord. Hear a siren sounding through streets and over mountains. So hold out your torch and spread some fire all around you. I'm a dog with a torch in my mouth for my Lord, making noise while I got time, spreading fire while I got earth. And how you wish it was already lit. Give me your fire, I'll do your work. I'm just a dog for my Lord. When I found him, took hold of him. When I
called I'm Working on a Building. If I was a sinner, I'd tell you what I would do. I'd quit my sinning and I'd work on a building too. I'm working on a building, I'm working on a building. I'm working on a building for my Lord, for my Lord. It's a Holy Ghost building, it's a Holy Ghost building. It's a Holy Ghost building for my Lord, for my Lord. If I was a gambler, I'd tell you what I would do. I'd go back gambling and I'd work on building too. I'm working on a building, I'm working on a building. I'm working on a building for my Lord, for my Lord. It's a Holy Ghost building, it's a Holy Ghost building. It's a Holy Ghost building for my Lord, for my Lord. If I was a preacher, I'd tell you what I would do. I'd keep on preaching and I'd work on a building too. I'm working on a building, I'm working on a building. I'm working on a building for my Lord, for my Lord. It's a Holy Ghost building, it's a Holy Ghost building. It's a Holy Ghost building for my Lord, for my Lord.
This song is called Angel Band.
Oh, come, angel band, come and around me stand. Bear me away on your snow white wings to my immortal home. My latest sun is sinking fast. My race is nearly run. My strongest trial
This next song is a song called Poor Wayfaring Stranger. It kind of continues the pilgrimage theme. I think Johnny Cash made this song pretty famous, but it's an old song. This is the one we're playing right now.
You're talking about Ring of Fire?
That's right. That's a religious song.
All right.
I'm just a poor wayfaring stranger, traveling through this world below. There's no sickness, no toil or danger in that bright land to which I go. I'm going there to see my Father and all my loved ones who've gone on. I'm just going over Jordan. I'm just going over home. I know dark clouds will gather round me. I know my way is hard and steep. A beauteous fields arise before me, where God's redeemed their vigils keep. I'm going there to see my mother. She said she'd meet me when I come. I'm just going over Jordan. I'm just going over home.
Take it away, Father.
I'm just a poor wayfaring stranger, traveling through this world below. There's no sickness, no toil or danger in that bright land to which I go. I'm going there to see my Father and all my loved ones who've gone on. I'm just going over Jordan. I'm just going over home.
Oh, by the way, if you haven't got it yet, we've got our CD for sale back there at the desk, along with a few T-shirts and other things.
With small, medium, and extra large t-shirts.
You play the guitar in this one, right?
We can volunteer and play the guitar real fast.
Anybody out here? Doctor, play the guitar?
No, it's too fast.
No, you're more of a singer.
I can't sing and play at the same time, you know that?
There's blood brother. You can tell.
Yeah.
Ready?
I want to see some bottom moves out there.
Alright.
Yeah, please don't. You guys ready?
No.
Yeah, let's go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
What a friend we have in Jesus, all our sins and griefs to bear. What a privilege to carry everything to God in prayer. Oh, what peace we often forfeit, oh, the needless pain we bear. All because we do not carry everything to God in prayer. Have we trials and temptations? Is there trouble anyway? We should never be discouraged. Take it to the Lord in prayer. Have we friends who are faithful, who would all our sorrows bear? Jesus knows our every weakness, so take it to the Lord in prayer. Are we weak and heavy laden, cumbered with a load of care? Precious Savior, still our refuge. Take it to thy Lord in prayer. But do thy friends despise forsake thee? Take it to the Lord in prayer.
Take it to the Lord in
In his arms take and shield thee. Now we'll find us all that's there. Now we'll find us all that's there.
Get someone who knew all the words in the crowd.
All right, here's a song that sounds exactly the same. It's called,
Play that same
Well, if it's so much, I'll play it twice. Everlasting Arms. Leaning on the Everlasting Arms.
Okay, we're gonna count. How much do you want me to count to?
How much can you count?
Like 3. I maxed out at 3.
Don't we do this in
1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
Oh, fellowship. I am singing the other song. Dang it. Okay. What a fellowship, what a joy divine, leaning on the everlasting arms. What a peace, man, what a peace of mind, leaning on the everlasting arms. Leaning, safe and secure from all alarms. Leaning on the everlasting arms. Woo! Oh, how sweet to walk in this pilgrim way, leaning on the everlasting arms. Oh, how bright the path grows from day to day, leaning on the everlasting arms. Leaning, safe and secure from all alarms. Oh, yeah, leaning on the everlasting arms. What have I to dread? What have I to fear? Leaning on the everlasting arms. I have left these with my Lord to me. Leaning on the everlasting arms. Leaning, safe and secure from all alarms. Oh, leaning on the everlasting arms. Leaning on the everlasting arms.
I think the song before was better. Yeah.
One more time.
Great,
You got another Pilgrim song?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is called Canaan's Land. If you're a Ricky Skaggs fan, you've heard this one before probably. He didn't write it, but he's done some beautiful recordings of it. He came and played with the band. He heard about us through, well, I want to say an eccentric Dominican, but that's sort of gratuitous. But another eccentric Dominican who knew him, and he came and he ate with the band, and he gave us his philosophy of life, and he played with us, and he played with them. I was away that weekend, but it was kind of wonderful because he inspired the sort of founding of the band. And, I mean, he didn't know that, but we like his music a lot.
Well, Thomas Joseph isn't upset about missing it.
No, I've accepted it peacefully in 10 years.
You want me to spell this for you?
Yeah. To Canaan's land, I'm on my way, where the soul never dies. My darkest nights will turn to day, where the soul never dies. Dear friends, there'll be no sad farewells, there'll be no tear-dimmed eyes, where all is joy and peace and love, and the soul never dies. where all is joy and peace and love, and the soul never dies.
This is a song that I wrote with one of my, I wrote with a couple of friends back when I was playing music in North Carolina before I became a Dominican. And it's kind of a funny story of how it came to be. I was like, I'm not great with writing words, so I was like coming up with this melody, and I was singing it. I came up to my friend Taylor and I said, Taylor, I've been coming up with this melody. And he said, that's funny because I just promised Saint Therese that if I created a novena to her and she answered it, I would write her a song. My first reaction was like, that's kind of strange. But the second reaction was, well, let's do it. So here it is.
Darling mother, would you guide my hand? My love, she's in America with a cherry band. Her long dark hair flows all down her breast. It's as soft as the night that she went and left. Sandy was the river that she walked. It was out the door and it was off the dock. The thunderhead and the steamboat stream, the lily white smoke and fun rafting gleam. We boarded that ship and she sent it well, fast and lonesome as a kind farewell. I asked her grace for 12 little towns with a market and all broken fields around. She took the east and she took the west. Elizabeth's the girl that I loved the best. My house was robbed when I shut the door. They boarded it up with a rusted oar. And so bring me a rose, Saint Therese, Saint Therese. Would you bring me a rose, Saint Therese, Saint Therese? All the little flowers are covered in bliss. Would you bring me a rose, Saint Therese? I saw her in the market just yesterday. I said hello, but she looked the other way. She wore a coat of black and 2 old shoes, and my eyes were light with the devil's news. I gave her a whistle, 300 cries. Then I found a rose as white as light. You can wash with water every day, but that dirt will stain your hide in the same old way. That way. So bring me a rose, Saint Therese, Saint Therese. Will you bring me a rose, Saint Therese, Saint Therese? All the little flowers are covered in bliss. Would you bring me a rose, Saint Therese? Come on. Two devils danced on a barrel of line. You know they're devil's mama, but you took a bad time. It was a slipped up jig with iron feet that fled like a coward when lovers meet. But there in the garden I can see a fine. Your handful of roses smells better than wine. To scatter the flowers for the one you love, as tender as the lightning in the sky above. Above.
Therese, Saint Therese. All the little flowers are covered and blessed. Would you bring me a rose, Saint Therese? All right, thanks so much. I guess we got one more, right? One more song, and then maybe some Q&A or something like that. But of course, you know, if you clap and stuff, I don't know. Just kidding.
Play all the songs.
But seriously.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, this song's called Just a Closer Walk with Thee. Just a closer walk with Thee. Granted, Jesus is my plea. Daily walking close to Thee. Let it be, dear Lord, let it be. I am weak, but Thou art strong. Jesus, keep me from all wrong. I'll be satisfied as long as I walk with Thee. Dear Lord, let me walk with Thee. Through this world of toils and snares, if I falter, Lord, who cares? Who with me my burden share? None but Thee, dear Lord, none but Thee. All right, play that piano. so much. Should we do our encore now or after questions?
Do we have a discussion right now? No. This is the only time a Dominican has turned down a discussion, so.
We'll do one or two more and then we'll really stop. All right.
Yeah. All right, this song's by a muse of ours. Her name is Gillian Welch. If you don't know who she is, you should find her music and listen to all of it, please. When I cross over, I will shout and sing. I will know my Savior at the mark where the nails have been. By the mark where the nails have been, by the sign upon his precious skin, I will know my Savior when I come to him. By the mark where the nails have been. A man of riches may gain a crown of jewels, but the King of heaven can be tumbled from the Prince of Fools. By the mark where the nails have been, by the sign upon his precious Son, I will know my Savior when I come to him. By the mark where the nails have been. On Calvary Mountain, where they laid him low, all my sin was paid for a long, long time ago. By the mark
when the fight is over, I'll fly away to a home on God's celestial shore. I'll fly away. Now I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away in the morning when I die. Hallelujah, by and by. I'll fly away. So when the shadows of the south have gone, I'll fly away. Like a bird from these prison walls I'll fly. I'll fly away. Now I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away in the morning when I die. Hallelujah, by and by. I'll fly away. Oh, how glad and happy when we meet. I'll fly away. No more cold iron shackles on my feet. I'll fly away. Singing, I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away in the morning when I die. Hallelujah, by and by. I'll fly away. Come on now, Brother Peter. There'll just a few more weary days and then I'll fly away to a land where the joys never end. I'll fly away. Now I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away in the morning when I die. Hallelujah, by and by. I'll fly away. Sing it with us. I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away in the morning when I die. Hallelujah, by and by. I'll fly away.
I think we have time for a few questions, so if you have a question, just raise your hand and I will bring the microphone to you.
Well, thank you very much for playing. Like a good Thomist, I studied before the concert tonight. I read some liner notes that were written by John Fahey, who was the big blues singer from around here, to a collection of sacred music from the 1920s and 1930s called American Primitive. And he noticed a very odd thing, which is true, which is that at that time, the one group that was conspicuously absent from sacred music were Catholics. Like you see lots of black gospel, lots of wasp gospel, Jewish records, but for example, no Cajun sacred music at all. And he argued that there were two reasons for that. One was the role of authority in the church, that any Protestant with a Stella guitar or a disc cutter could go and record a sacred record, and a Catholic wouldn't necessarily feel free to do that. And the other was the role of sacramental life in the church, that Catholics drew their source of strength from the Eucharist, while Protestants were more likely perhaps to turn to enthusiasm, music like this. And so I wonder, what do you make of that? And is there a reason why records like this are so rare?
Turn to the Thomists. That's a great question.
That's a great first question. I agree. I think there's two things to be said. The first is, the one fundamental answer is because the sacred liturgy in the Catholic tradition was at the time in Latin and had Gregorian accompaniment, and so you had a more traditional liturgical setting that was the background, and you didn't have the experiments yet of inculcating using some Protestant hymnody, as well as some of the songs we sang tonight are songs that would have been used in small Baptist churches in Kentucky or Tennessee or North Carolina in the 20s and 30s, when really there was no organ. This was the songbook, so to speak. So I think part of it has to do with the liturgical customs. The other side is, America is a Protestant country, and I think that's the main reason, is that Scotch-Irish bluegrass music and old-time fiddle and gospel music started really when Scotch-Irish fiddle music encountered blues music in the Appalachian Mountains. But it's not true to say that the Catholics didn't have their own amazing folk music traditions, and the great example is Irish music, which was so filled with sort of similar themes. And there's a great Dominican who, from the 19th and early 20th century in Ireland, named Thomas Burke. He's got 2-volume collections of sermons, and they're more like almost masterful major essays. But he writes a whole sermon, really long sermon, for I think St. Patrick's Day, actually, in the 19th century in Galway, in Ireland, where he talks about how Irish music was one of the ways that under English oppression, the Irish kept their Catholic sort of soul and their identity as a religious people down to the roots of their folk customs, their dancing, their courtships, their way they mourned, the way that they celebrated together in ordinary community life. And so I do think that is the kind of impetus in part to some of the later bluegrass music was the Irish influence. So I think that's part of it. And then the other side is that when Catholics got into folk music in the 70s, it had already become electronic. And so it was I'm showing my total prejudices here. I'm happy to dispute them later. But with electronic music, folk music become less technical and more emotivist. As where I think in the old time and bluegrass music, it's a very difficult and sort of technical music. And so there was a hierarchy of who could hierarchy, not since prohibitive, but since like people had to acquire, still true if you go to national, people had to acquire a lot of skill to kind of get in the circle. And that kept a kind of high quality. And so we entered the folk music scene at a different time, I think.
Hi, this was fantastic. Thank you so much. We just loved it. I was watching people walk by outside and kind of look in. And it kind of raised for me the question of this is an evangelization tool. And I'm thinking about what the Thomistic Institute, for example, is doing, taking the spoken word into secular universities. How are you thinking about, you all as a presence just started a fantastic conversation in the secular world. How do you think about using yourselves or the Hillbilly Thomists as a evangelization tool?
I think we get letters from people who've been affected by it. The album.
Yeah, I mean, we've had. I think that the evangelical success of the Hillbilly Thomists goes hand in hand with our vow of obedience, which everything that we do in obedience to our superiors and ultimately in obedience to God's providence. And it's hard to talk about the future of the band because, because of that. But it is great to see how God's providence works through our music in ways you'd never expect. Like, we do get messages from people saying, it's been years since I've been to church and I heard your music, and now I spent the whole day reading about what a Thomist is. Or people who will say, like my daughter, she's fallen away from a church, but now I have something that I can send her that is religious but not pushy. And people have also mentioned how their sense of vocation has changed from hearing songs like I'm a Dog. I think God uses our music according to His will, and we're not really sure what that is.
I particularly enjoy watching how you enjoy playing together. And it brings to mind for years and years on our local NPR station, we had a Sunday morning program called Stained Glass Bluegrass. And I don't think it's on anymore, and I miss it.
We're still trying to recover emotionally.
Here's my question. Does anybody at all here know where one can go to a bluegrass mass in this area? Or within 100 miles even?
I think it's a novel concept, so you should put a copyright on it immediately.
No, we're sorry, we don't.
Any other questions?
So really, what's the whole backstory on this? When did you get inspired to do this? How did you find each other, besides all being in the same studies course at DHS? But tell us about the background on this, please.
Well, the background is that maybe 16 years ago when I entered the novitiate, that's the first year in religious life for the province of St. Joseph, which is our province. We do the first year in the novitiate where you learn to sort of, practice obedience and all that stuff in the liturgy and wear the habit and so forth in Cincinnati. And I guess my novice master had one of those human development ideas about, hobbies. And he said that we needed to all have a hobby on Thursdays that we would work on. And, Cincinnati is just over the river from Kentucky, so there's a lot of bluegrass music. So I asked him if I could learn bluegrass mandolin, and he said, sure, what's that? And my next door neighbor in the novitiate is a classmate of mine, is now a biblical scholar working in Jerusalem. He lived a kind of asceticism of having bluegrass music through the wall for a year. And then when I came to the Dominican house in Washington, there was a young man who entered, I think, the year after me, who was from Western Kentucky. And so we started to play together, and then he called it the Hillbilly Thomists because Flannery O'Connor says that people took her to be a hillbilly nihilist, but she's actually a hillbilly Thomist. That's her expression. And so he gave it that name, which stuck. And then a lot of these very talented musicians entered some years later and reappropriated the band, as it were, and added a lot of talent and got a plan. And we record albums regularly in the House of Studies every year, sacred music, not we, but the student brothers, some of them, but it's a larger group that does for formal choral music. And after 5 years of that, different kinds of themes and Gregorian chant, Christmas music, and so forth, their superior, the student master, we call him, got the idea that maybe it was time after all to do a folk music / Americana / bluegrass album. So we did that this fall, and that's sort of how it came together.
I think we have time for one more question.
Thank you. You guys mentioned this Gillian Welch. I was wondering if you could just give us some other artists that you like. So if we like this, something else you may enjoy that we could look up.
Yeah, there's a band called the Stillwater Hobos that are pretty influential of us. For those of you who don't know, that's Brother Simon's old band. So I would say that one. Other people have other opinions.
That's about it. I mean, David Bowie.
Smithsonian puts out these albums collected of old recordings of kind of classic bluegrass festivals, and they have like one of Doc Watson and Bill Monroe playing together that is fantastic. But they've got also some like older lists of so I'd say check on Amazon or wherever and look, or Spotify, and look at Smithsonian Bluegrass Folk. It's called Folkways. There's a lot of great old material that is influential still, like a lot of the old time music. You can find collections. I mean, Ricky Skaggs is one of the people today trying to keep this music alive successfully, and has put together a lot of albums of some of the older time people, like the Monroe brothers, Doc Watson, Stanley Brothers, Earl Scruggs. Right, that's the canon, and then you can that's the canon. And once you listen to the canon, you can listen to the people who are the tradition that derives from the canon.
Yeah, there's also this the Byrds. Every season, turn. Okay, well they recorded a country album Sweetheart of the Rodeo. And I like that album a lot, but some people have said, oh, your album kind of sounds like that. So, yeah, so the Byrds have more to offer than just pop.
Thank you very much. It's been great to be here with you all tonight.